You're pregnant. Jake's voice was barely a whisper, his face a mixture of shock and overwhelming joy. Mia's hand trembled as it rested on her still flat stomach, tears streaming down her cheeks. This wasn't supposed to happen, Jake. None of this was supposed to happen. What do you mean? Mia, this is incredible news. We're going to have a baby. She turned away, unable to meet his eyes. You don't understand. I didn't fall in love with you by accident. I planned this. Every meeting, every conversation, every moment between us. It was all revenge. Revenge? What are you talking about? Welcome back to Mr. Ashbourne Golden Narratives, where love stories reveal the most shocking truths about the human heart. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button because today's story will leave you questioning everything you think you know about love and revenge. I want to thank every single one of you incredible subscribers who make this channel possible. Your engagement, your comments, your shares fuel every story I bring to you. Hit that like button right now and tell me in the comments, if you discovered the person you married had originally planned to destroy you, could you forgive them? Because this story will take you through the most complex emotions of love, betrayal, and redemption. Now, let's get back to the story. Mia Brown had built her life on two unshakable principles: protect your family at all costs, and never let anyone hurt the people you love without consequences. The bond between Mia and Lily Brown ran deeper than blood. It was forged in the fires of shared struggle and unwavering loyalty. While Mia had channeled her fierce determination into building a thriving fitness empire in the heart of Manhattan, Lily had chosen a different path, one that required equal courage but offered far less certainty. Lily's art studio occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, where natural light flooded through massive windows, illuminating canvases that seemed to pulse with life. Her work defied easy categorization: part sculpture, part installation, part pure emotion made tangible. She worked with mirrors, steel, and light, creating pieces that transformed spaces and challenged perceptions. You know you're brilliant, right? Mia would say during her weekly visits, watching her sister manipulate materials that seemed to bend to her creative will. Lily would just smile, that quiet confidence that came from knowing your purpose, even when the world hadn't caught up to your vision yet. The art world, however, was notoriously unforgiving to emerging artists. Gallery owners demanded proven track records. Collectors wanted established names. Critics could make or break careers with a single review. Lily had talent that took your breath away, but talent alone wasn't enough to pay rent or buy materials for the ambitious installations that lived in her imagination. For 3 years she had been building her reputation piece by piece, showing in smaller galleries, participating in group exhibitions, slowly gaining recognition among those who understood that true art pushed boundaries. Her work had been featured in several art magazines, and a few serious collectors had begun to take notice. But the breakthrough moment, the commission that would elevate her from promising artist to established name, remained frustratingly elusive. That changed on a crisp October morning when Lily's phone rang with an opportunity that seemed too good to be true. Miss Brown? This is Sarah Smith from Hawthorne Technologies. Mr. Hawthorne would like to commission a major installation for our new headquarters lobby. Lily's heart raced as Sarah explained the scope of the project. Hawthorne Technologies was one of the most innovative tech companies in the city, and their new Manhattan headquarters was already being hailed as an architectural marvel. The lobby installation would be seen by thousands of visitors, employees, and industry leaders every month. The budget is $75,000, Sarah continued, and Lily had to sit down. It was more money than she'd made in the past 2 years combined. Mr. Hawthorne specifically requested an artist who could create something that bridges the gap between technology and humanity, something that speaks to innovation while remaining emotionally resonant. When Lily called Mia that evening, her voice was electric with excitement. This is it, Mia. This is the opportunity I've been working toward my entire career. If I can pull this off, if I can create something truly extraordinary, it could change everything. Mia had never heard her sister sound so alive, so full of possibility. Tell me about this Jake Hawthorne. What's he like? I've only met him briefly, but he seems different from other corporate clients. He actually looked at my portfolio for over an hour, asking detailed questions about my process, my inspiration. He didn't just want something pretty for his lobby, he wanted something meaningful. Jake Hawthorne was indeed different from the typical tech mogul. At 34, he had built Hawthorne Technologies from a small startup into a company that was reshaping how people interacted with digital spaces. But unlike many of his peers, Jake understood that technology without humanity was just sophisticated machinery. He wanted his company's headquarters to reflect that philosophy. Their first official meeting took place in the empty lobby space, a soaring atrium with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered stunning views of the city. Jake walked Lily through his vision, speaking passionately about creating an environment where innovation and human connection could coexist. "I don't want corporate art," he told her, his dark eyes intense with conviction. "I want something that makes people feel something. Something that reminds them that behind all our algorithms and interfaces, we're still human beings seeking connection." Lily felt a spark of creative fire that she hadn't experienced in months. This wasn't just a commission, it was a chance to create something that could touch thousands of lives, something that could prove art belonged in every space where humans gathered. She spent the next 2 weeks developing her concept, working 18-hour days, sketching, modeling, refining. The piece she envisioned would be called Convergence, a 12-foot sculpture that combined mirrors, brushed steel, and programmable LED lights to create an ever-changing installation that responded to the movement and energy of people in the space. When she presented the concept to Jake, his reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. "This is exactly what I was hoping for. It's innovative, it's beautiful, and it tells a story about human connection. How long do you need?" 4 months, Lily said, her mind already racing with the technical challenges ahead. "It's complex, but I can make it extraordinary." Jake smiled, extending his hand. "Then let's make something extraordinary together." The next 4 months became the most intense creative period of Lily's life. She rented a larger studio space to accommodate the massive sculpture, working with engineers to ensure the technical components would function flawlessly, collaborating with lighting designers to perfect the interplay between natural and artificial illumination. Mia watched her sister transform during this period. Lily had always been dedicated to her art, but this project consumed her in the most beautiful way. She would call Mia at midnight, breathless with excitement about a breakthrough in the mirror configuration. She would send photos of works in progress, each image showing the sculpture evolving into something truly magnificent. "I've never seen you like this," Mia told her during one of their coffee dates, studying her sister's face, which seemed to glow with creative fulfillment. "I feel like everything I've learned, everything I've struggled with has led to this moment," Lily replied. "This piece is going to be my masterpiece, Mia. I can feel it." The sculpture took shape slowly, each element carefully crafted and positioned. The mirrors were cut to precise specifications, creating geometric patterns that would fragment and multiply the light in unexpected ways. The steel framework was both structural and aesthetic, its curves suggesting movement and flow. The LED system was programmed to respond to ambient sound and motion, ensuring that Convergence would never look exactly the same twice. As the installation date approached, Lily's excitement was infectious. She had invited Mia to the public unveiling, an event that would include art critics, gallery owners, potential collectors, and industry leaders. It was the kind of exposure that could launch a career into the stratosphere. "I keep thinking about what Jake said," Lily confided the night before the unveiling. "About creating something that reminds people of their humanity. I think I've done that, Mia. I think I've created something that will make people feel connected to something larger than themselves." Mia squeezed her sister's hand, feeling a surge of protective pride. "You've created something incredible, Lily. Tomorrow the whole world is going to see what I've always known, that you're one of the most talented artists of your generation." The morning of the unveiling dawned bright and clear, as if the universe itself was celebrating Lily's moment of triumph. She arrived at the Hawthorne Technologies building early, making final adjustments to the lighting sequences, ensuring every mirror was perfectly positioned, every steel curve gleaming under the morning sun streaming through the windows. Convergence was breathtaking. The sculpture seemed to breathe with life, the mirrors catching and throwing light in patterns that shifted with each passing cloud, each movement in the space. The steel framework created shadows that danced across the floor, while the LED elements pulsed gently, like a technological heartbeat. Mia arrived an hour before the official unveiling, and when she saw the completed installation, she felt tears spring to her eyes. Her sister had created something truly magical, something that transformed the corporate lobby into a space of wonder and beauty. "Lily, this is..." Mia struggled for words. "This is beyond anything I imagined. It's perfect." Lily stood beside her creation, radiant with pride and anticipation. In a few hours the art world would see what she was capable of. Her career would be launched. Her dreams would finally become reality. The Hawthorne Technologies lobby buzzed with anticipation as Manhattan's art elite gathered for what promised to be one of the season's most significant unveilings. Gallery owners clutched champagne flutes while scanning the crowd for emerging talent worth investing in. Critics positioned themselves strategically, notebooks ready to capture first impressions that could make or break an artist's future. Collectors whispered among themselves, already calculating potential value and cultural impact. Lily moved through the crowd with nervous energy, her black dress elegant yet understated, allowing convergence to command all attention. The sculpture dominated the space magnificently, its mirrors catching the late afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, creating prismatic rainbows that danced across the marble floors and steel surfaces. "Ms. Brown, your installation is absolutely captivating," said Margaret Whitfield, director of the prestigious Whitfield Gallery in Chelsea. "The way it transforms the entire space. I'd love to discuss representing your work." Lily's heart soared. Margaret Whitfield had launched the careers of 3 artists who now commanded 6-figure prices for their pieces. This was exactly the kind of validation she had dreamed of. Across the lobby, art critic Jonathan Hayes from Art Forum was taking detailed notes, his expression one of genuine admiration. "The technical execution is flawless," he murmured to his colleague, "but more importantly, it has soul. This piece actually makes you feel something." Mia stood near the entrance, watching her sister navigate conversations with the confidence of someone whose talent was finally being recognized. Every smile, every handshake, every business card exchange felt like a step toward the future Lily had worked so tirelessly to achieve. The LED elements pulsed gently in response to the crowd's movement, creating an ever-shifting light show that seemed to breathe with the energy of the room. Visitors found themselves drawn into the installation's orbit, some reaching out tentatively to touch the polished steel surfaces, others simply standing in quiet contemplation as the mirrors reflected their images in infinite, fragmented patterns. "It's like looking at the future and the past simultaneously," observed Dr. Elena Rodriguez, curator at the Museum of Contemporary Art. "The mirrors show us who we are while the technology points toward who we might become." Brilliant conceptual work. As the afternoon progressed, Lily's confidence grew with each positive interaction. This was her moment, the culmination of years of struggle and dedication. She could see her future unfolding: gallery representation, museum exhibitions, financial stability that would allow her to focus purely on her art without the constant worry about rent and materials. Jake Hawthorne had been notably absent from the main gathering, though his assistant Sarah had assured everyone he would arrive shortly to officially unveil the piece and share his thoughts on the collaboration. When he finally appeared, stepping through the lobby's main entrance, Lily felt a flutter of anticipation. His approval had made this entire opportunity possible, and she was eager to see his reaction to the completed installation. But something was wrong. Even from across the crowded space, Lily could see the tension in Jake's shoulders, the tight set of his jaw. His usual warm demeanor had been replaced by something cold and distant. He moved through the crowd with mechanical politeness, his responses to greetings clipped and distracted. Mia noticed it too, a chill of unease settling in her stomach as she watched Jake approach the sculpture. His expression was unreadable, but there was an energy about him that felt dangerous, unpredictable. The crowd gradually quieted as Jake positioned himself near Convergence, clearly preparing to address the gathering. Lily moved closer, her heart racing with anticipation. This was the moment when her patron would praise her work, cementing her reputation in front of the most influential people in the art world. Jake cleared his throat, and the lobby fell silent except for the gentle hum of the installation's electronic components. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the space, but the words that emerged were not what anyone expected. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I had hoped to present an installation that would represent the values and vision of Hawthorne Technologies." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the sculpture with what could only be described as disappointment. "Unfortunately, what we have here is too abstract, too esoteric for a corporate environment." The silence that followed was deafening. Lily felt the blood drain from her face as Jake continued, his words falling like hammer blows on her dreams. "While I'm sure this piece has artistic merit in the appropriate setting, it simply doesn't align with our company's needs. The concept is too removed from practical application, too focused on artistic expression rather than functional beauty. Our employees and clients need something more accessible, more immediately comprehensible." Margaret Whitfield's expression shifted from interest to polite distance. Jonathan Hayes stopped taking notes, his pen hovering uncertainly over his notebook. The collectors who had been discussing potential acquisitions suddenly found their champagne glasses fascinating. "Therefore," Jake continued, his voice growing firmer, "I'm asking Ms. Brown to remove the installation by the end of next week. We'll be commissioning a more suitable piece for this space." The words echoed through the lobby like a death sentence. Lily stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. 4 months of her life, her heart, her soul poured into this creation, and Jake was dismissing it as unsuitable, inappropriate, a failure. Mia watched in horror as her sister's face crumpled, the confident artist of moments before replaced by someone who looked utterly shattered. The crowd began to disperse quickly, conversations dying as people realized they were witnessing a professional execution. "Lily, I'm so sorry," Margaret Whitfield murmured as she passed, but her tone had already shifted to the polite sympathy reserved for artists whose careers had just ended before they began. "Perhaps we can discuss your other work sometime." But they both knew that conversation would never happen. In the art world, public rejection by a major patron was a scarlet letter that followed you forever. If Jake Hawthorne, known for his sophisticated taste and support of emerging artists, found her work unsuitable, who else would take the risk? Jonathan Hayes approached Lily with genuine sympathy in his eyes. "I want you to know that I think your work is extraordinary," he said quietly. "But I can't review a piece that's been publicly rejected by its patron. I'm sorry." One by one, the gallery owners, critics, and collectors who had been so enthusiastic just minutes before made their polite excuses and departed. The installation that had seemed so alive and vibrant now felt like a monument to failure, its lights still pulsing, its mirrors still reflecting, but to an increasingly empty room. Mia rushed to her sister's side as the last of the guests filtered out, leaving only Jake, his assistant Sarah, and a few Hawthorne Technologies employees who looked as uncomfortable as everyone else felt. "Lily," Mia whispered, reaching for her sister's hand, but Lily pulled away, her eyes still fixed on Jake with a mixture of disbelief and devastation. "I don't understand," Lily said, her voice barely audible. "You said it was exactly what you wanted. You approved every element, every design choice. What changed?" Jake's expression remained impassive, though something flickered in his eyes, regret, perhaps, or guilt. But his words remained cold and final. "I realized it wasn't appropriate for our space. I'm sorry for any inconvenience." Inconvenience. 4 months of passionate creation, the most important opportunity of her career, her entire future, reduced to an inconvenience. "The payment for materials and time invested will be transferred to your account," Sarah added quietly, clearly trying to soften the blow. "And of course, you're welcome to relocate the piece to a more suitable venue." But Lily wasn't listening anymore. She was staring at Convergence, seeing it now through Jake's eyes, too abstract, too esoteric, a failure of communication between artist and patron. The mirrors that had seemed to capture infinite possibility now reflected only her own shattered dreams. Mia felt rage building in her chest as she watched her sister's world collapse. This wasn't just professional disappointment. This was cruelty. Jake had built Lily up, encouraged her vision, then destroyed her in the most public way possible. The art world was small and unforgiving. Word of this rejection would spread within hours. "Come on, Lily," Mia said gently, taking her sister's arm. "Let's go home." Lily allowed herself to be led away, but she kept looking back at her creation, as if trying to understand how something so beautiful could be deemed so worthless. The installation continued its light show, responding to their movement as they walked toward the exit, a final, heartbreaking reminder of what might have been. As they stepped out into the Manhattan evening, Mia made a silent promise. Jake Hawthorne had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He had destroyed someone precious, someone innocent, someone who had trusted him completely. And for that he was going to pay. What do you think drives someone to seek revenge when they watch a loved one's dreams get crushed? Drop a comment and let me know. The silence in Lily's Brooklyn studio was deafening. Where once the space had hummed with creative energy, now it felt like a mausoleum for abandoned dreams. Canvases sat untouched against the walls, their surfaces blank and accusatory. The tools that had once been extensions of Lily's artistic vision lay scattered across workbenches, gathering dust like artifacts from a forgotten civilization. Mia stood in the doorway, watching her sister move through the space like a ghost haunting her former life. 3 weeks had passed since the rejection, and Lily had barely spoken more than a few words at a time. The vibrant, passionate artist who had called at midnight with breakthrough ideas had vanished, replaced by someone who seemed to be slowly disappearing from the inside out. "Have you eaten today?" Mia asked gently, though she already knew the answer. The refrigerator contained nothing but expired milk and takeout containers that had been there since before the unveiling. Lily shrugged, not bothering to look up from where she sat on the floor, staring at a half-finished sketch that would never see completion. Not hungry. The transformation was devastating to witness. Lily had always been slender, but now she looked fragile, as if a strong wind might blow her away entirely. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usually lustrous hair hung limp and unwashed. She wore the same clothes she'd had on yesterday and the day before that. "Lily, you can't keep doing this to yourself," Mia said, settling beside her sister on the cold concrete floor. "One rejection doesn't define your entire career." "It wasn't just a rejection," Lily whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. "It was a public execution. Do you know how many calls I've gotten since that day? 0. Margaret Whitfield won't return my emails. The gallery that was interested in my smaller pieces suddenly has scheduling conflicts for our meeting. Even the art supply store where I've shopped for 5 years treats me differently now." Mia's heart ached as she watched her sister's fingers trace the edges of the sketch, a preliminary drawing for Convergence, that now served as a painful reminder of everything that had gone wrong. "Jonathan Hayes published his review yesterday," Lily continued, pulling out her phone with trembling hands. "Want to hear what he said about the promising young artist whose ambitious installation failed to connect with its intended audience?" "He was kind, Mia. Kinder than he needed to be. But even kindness feels like pity now." The art world's response had been swift and merciless. Within days of the rejection, word had spread through the tight-knit community of galleries, critics, and collectors. Lily Brown was the artist who had overreached, who had created something too esoteric for practical application, who had failed to understand her audience. In an industry where reputation was everything, she had become a cautionary tale. "I keep thinking about what I could have done differently," Lily said, her voice breaking. "Maybe if I had made it more accessible, more commercial. Maybe if I had listened when Jake talked about functional beauty instead of pushing my own vision so hard." "Stop," Mia said firmly, taking her sister's hands. "You created something extraordinary. I saw how people reacted before Jake spoke. They were mesmerized, Lily. They understood exactly what you were trying to say." But Lily shook her head, pulling away. "It doesn't matter what they thought before. What matters is that my patron, the person who commissioned the work, found it unsuitable. That's all anyone will remember." The cruelest part was watching Lily internalize the rejection, turning Jake's harsh words into a fundamental questioning of her artistic vision. She had begun dismantling not just Convergence, but her entire creative identity, convinced that her instincts were flawed, her voice invalid. "I've been thinking about going back to teaching," Lily said quietly, the words falling like stones into still water. "Maybe getting a job at one of the community colleges. Something stable, something where I can't fail so spectacularly." Mia felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. Teaching wasn't Lily's dream, it was surrender. Her sister was talking about abandoning everything she had worked for, everything she was meant to be, because one man had decided her vision wasn't commercially viable. "You're not a teacher, Lily. You're an artist. A brilliant one." Lily corrected. "I was an artist. Now I'm just someone who thought she was more talented than she actually is." The studio around them told the story of Lily's retreat from her calling. Brushes sat unwashed in jars of murky water. Sculptures that had been in progress for months remained unfinished, their potential frozen in time. The large windows that had once filled the space with inspiring natural light now seemed to mock the darkness that had settled over everything. Mia watched her sister pack away her art supplies with methodical precision, each tool wrapped carefully and placed in boxes as if she were preparing for a funeral. The sight was unbearable, like watching someone bury themselves alive. "I called the gallery where I work," Lily said, her voice eerily calm. "Told them I need to take indefinite leave. They were understanding. Too understanding. I think they're relieved not to have the failed artist around, potentially scaring away clients." "Lily, you're being paranoid." "Am I?" Lily's laugh was bitter and hollow. "Sarah from Hawthorne Technologies called yesterday. Very polite, very professional. They've hired a removal company to take Convergence away tomorrow. Apparently, Jake has already commissioned someone else for the space. A more appropriate artist, I'm sure." The news felt like a physical blow to Mia's system. Not only had Jake destroyed her sister's career, but he was erasing all evidence of her work, replacing her vision with something more palatable, more commercial. It was as if he wanted to pretend Lily had never existed at all. "What will happen to the sculpture?" Mia asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Storage facility in Queens. I can't afford to keep it long-term, so eventually—" Lily shrugged. "I suppose I'll have to dismantle it, sell the materials, try to recoup some of the costs." The thought of Convergence being broken apart, its mirrors shattered and steel melted down, felt like witnessing the murder of something sacred. That installation represented 4 months of Lily's soul, her hopes, her dreams of what art could accomplish in the world. "There has to be another way," Mia said desperately. "Other galleries, other opportunities." "With what reputation?" Lily's voice was flat, defeated. "Who's going to take a chance on an artist who couldn't deliver what her patron wanted? Who's going to trust my vision when Jake Hawthorne, someone known for supporting innovative art, found my work unsuitable?" Mia watched her sister fold into herself, becoming smaller and more fragile with each passing moment. This wasn't just professional disappointment, this was the systematic destruction of someone's identity, their sense of purpose, their belief in their own worth. "I keep thinking about that moment," Lily whispered, staring at her hands. Standing there in front of all those people, watching their faces change when Jake spoke. The way Margaret Whitfield looked at me afterward, like I was something embarrassing she needed to escape from. The way the critics stopped taking notes. The way everyone just left. The image was seared into Mia's memory too, her brilliant, talented sister standing alone beside her masterpiece, watching her future crumble in real time. The casual cruelty of it, the public nature of the humiliation, the way Jake had delivered his verdict without a trace of empathy or regret. "He didn't just reject your work," Mia said quietly, the realization crystallizing into something hard and sharp. "He destroyed you deliberately. In front of everyone who mattered. That wasn't business, Lily. That was cruelty." But Lily was beyond anger, lost in a fog of self-doubt and despair that seemed to grow thicker each day. She had stopped fighting, stopped believing in herself, stopped imagining a future where her art mattered. As Mia left the studio that evening, walking through Brooklyn streets that seemed grayer and colder than usual, she felt something dangerous taking root in her chest. Jake Hawthorne had taken her sister's light and snuffed it out without a second thought. He had moved on with his golden life while Lily withered away in a dusty studio, convinced she was worthless. The injustice of it burned through Mia's veins like acid. Jake was probably at some elegant dinner party right now, charming investors and art collectors, while Lily sat alone in the dark, questioning everything she had ever believed about herself. That night, as Mia lay awake staring at the ceiling of her Manhattan apartment, a plan began to form. Jake Hawthorne thought he could destroy people without consequences, that his wealth and status made him untouchable. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Mia's transformation began with research. While Lily retreated deeper into her cocoon of despair, Mia channeled her fury into something far more dangerous: methodical, calculated planning. Her Manhattan gym became her war room, the early morning hours before clients arrived dedicated to studying her target with the precision of a military strategist. She discovered that Jake attended the same coffee shop every Tuesday morning at 7:30, always ordering a double espresso and reading the Wall Street Journal at the corner table by the window. He frequented the Metropolitan Museum's contemporary art exhibitions, often spending hours studying pieces that challenged conventional thinking. His social media presence was minimal but revealing: posts about innovative design, shares of articles about the intersection of technology and humanity, photos from charity events supporting arts education. "Interesting," Mia murmured, scrolling through his LinkedIn connections. Jake's professional network included several prominent art dealers, museum curators, and gallery owners. For someone who had so brutally dismissed Lily's work as too esoteric, he certainly surrounded himself with people who appreciated avant-garde artistic expression. The contradiction intrigued her. Either Jake was a hypocrite who enjoyed sophisticated art privately while demanding commercial mediocrity professionally, or there was something else driving his rejection of Lily's installation. Either way, it didn't matter. He had destroyed her sister, and he would pay for that destruction. Mia's investigation revealed that Jake was engaged to Victoria Pemberton, daughter of real estate mogul Charles Pemberton. Their relationship was the kind of strategic alliance that Manhattan's elite specialized in: two powerful families joining forces to consolidate wealth and influence. Victoria was beautiful in the way that money could perfect, with platinum blonde hair, designer everything, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. The engagement had been announced 6 months ago with great fanfare in the society pages. Victoria's Instagram showcased their relationship in carefully curated glimpses: charity galas, weekend trips to the Hamptons, intimate dinners at restaurants where reservations required months of advance planning. They looked perfect together, like figures from a magazine spread about successful young couples. But Mia noticed something interesting in the photos. While Victoria gazed adoringly at the camera, Jake's attention often seemed elsewhere, his smile polite but distant. In candid shots, when he thought no one was watching, his expression held a quality that Mia recognized: the look of someone going through the motions of a life that didn't quite fit. Perfect, she whispered, studying a photo from last month's Museum of Modern Art benefit. Jake stood beside Victoria, impeccably dressed in a tailored tuxedo, but his eyes were focused on a sculpture in the background, his face animated with genuine interest. You're not as satisfied with your perfect life as you pretend to be. Mia had always been beautiful, but in a natural, athletic way that reflected her dedication to fitness and health. To seduce Jake Hawthorne, she would need to become something else entirely, intellectually sophisticated, culturally refined, mysteriously alluring. She enrolled in art history courses at Columbia, absorbing information about contemporary movements, critical theory, and the philosophical underpinnings of modern artistic expression. She studied the artists Jake followed on social media, learning their techniques, their influences, their place in the broader cultural conversation. Mia hired a personal stylist, explaining that she wanted to project sophisticated elegance rather than athletic functionality. Together, they curated a wardrobe that whispered wealth and taste. Silk blouses that draped perfectly, tailored blazers that suggested both power and femininity, jewelry that was understated but unmistakably expensive. You're going for mysterious intellectual, the stylist explained, holding up a midnight blue dress that managed to be both conservative and sensual. Someone who could discuss Rothko over dinner and make it sound like foreplay. The physical transformation was only the beginning. Mia practiced conversations in front of her bathroom mirror, perfecting the art of intellectual seduction. She learned to ask the right questions, to offer insights that would intrigue rather than impress, to create the kind of mental stimulation that someone like Jake would find irresistible. She studied Victoria's weaknesses too, noting the superficiality of her cultural interests, the way she posed with art pieces without seeming to actually see them. Victoria was beautiful and well-connected, but she lacked the intellectual depth that Jake's private interests suggested he craved. You want someone who understands what you're really passionate about, Mia said to Jake's photo on her laptop screen. Someone who can challenge you, who sees the world the way you do. Victoria is arm candy for your public life, but she's not feeding your soul. The plan crystallized over weeks of careful observation and preparation. Mia would position herself as everything Victoria wasn't. Intellectually stimulating, genuinely passionate about art and culture, mysterious enough to intrigue him but accessible enough to pursue. She would make Jake fall completely, utterly in love with her, then destroy him publicly the way he had destroyed Lily. The beauty of it was that Jake's own interests would be the weapon she used against him. His appreciation for sophisticated art, his desire for intellectual connection, his apparent dissatisfaction with his perfect but shallow relationship, all of it would become ammunition in her campaign of seduction and destruction. Mia practiced her new persona at smaller gallery openings, testing her ability to engage in the kind of conversations that would appeal to someone like Jake. She discussed the emotional impact of abstract expressionism with collectors, debated the role of technology in contemporary sculpture with curators, and gradually built a reputation as someone worth knowing in Manhattan's art scene. You have excellent instincts, said Dr. Patricia Vance, a prominent art critic, after Mia offered a particularly insightful observation about a multimedia installation. Have you considered writing about art professionally? The validation was intoxicating, but Mia reminded herself that this was all performance, all preparation for the moment when she would deploy these skills against her target. Every conversation, every connection, every carefully crafted insight was building toward the destruction of Jake Hawthorne. The final piece of her preparation involved understanding Jake's vulnerabilities. Beneath the successful tech mogul exterior, she detected signs of someone struggling with expectations. Family pressure, board demands, the weight of maintaining a public image that might not reflect his true interests or desires. His father, Richard Hawthorne, was a legendary figure in Manhattan business circles, known for his ruthless approach to both commerce and family. Jake had inherited the company at 28 when Richard suffered his first heart attack, and the pressure to live up to that legacy seemed to weigh heavily on him. Daddy issues, Mia noted with satisfaction. Perfect. You're probably desperate for someone who sees you as more than just Richard Hawthorne's son. As her research deepened, Mia felt herself becoming someone new, sharper, more calculating, more dangerous than she had ever imagined possible. The protective sister who had watched Lily's dreams crumble was evolving into something predatory, someone capable of the kind of sophisticated manipulation that Jake's destruction would require. She practiced her smile in the mirror, perfecting the expression that would suggest intelligence, mystery, and just enough vulnerability to make him want to protect her. She rehearsed conversations about art and technology, preparing responses that would demonstrate her depth while revealing carefully calculated glimpses of her personality. "You're going to fall so hard," she whispered to Jake's photo, her reflection in her laptop screen showing a woman transformed. "You're going to believe that I'm everything you've been looking for, everything Victoria isn't, everything you need to feel complete. And when you're completely, utterly in love with me, when you've thrown away your perfect life for the chance to be with me, I'm going to destroy you so thoroughly that you'll understand exactly how Lily felt that day." The Pemberton Foundation's arts benefit was 3 weeks away. Mia had secured an invitation through her new connections in the art world, positioning herself as an emerging collector with sophisticated taste and deep pockets. Jake would be there with Victoria, playing the role of the perfect couple for Manhattan's cultural elite. But by the end of that evening, Mia intended to plant the first seeds of doubt in his mind about his engagement, his choices, his entire carefully constructed life. She would become the question mark that would eventually unravel everything he thought he wanted. What lengths would you go to for someone you love? Sometimes the desire for justice transforms us into people we never thought we could become. The Pemberton Foundation's annual arts benefit transformed the Metropolitan Museum's Temple of Dender into a glittering showcase of Manhattan's cultural elite. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over ancient Egyptian stone while guests in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos mingled beneath the soaring glass ceiling. The irony wasn't lost on Mia. She was about to begin her own campaign of calculated destruction in a space dedicated to preserving civilization's greatest achievements. Mia arrived fashionably late, her entrance timed to perfection. The midnight blue silk dress moved like liquid shadow as she walked, drawing appreciative glances without appearing to seek attention. Her hair was swept into an elegant chignon that revealed the graceful line of her neck, adorned with a simple strand of pearls that whispered old money rather than shouting new wealth. She had spent hours perfecting this look, sophisticated enough to belong in this rarefied atmosphere, mysterious enough to intrigue, beautiful enough to captivate. Tonight, she wasn't Mia Brown, gym owner from Manhattan. She was someone entirely new, someone dangerous. Champagne. A waiter appeared at her elbow, offering crystal flutes filled with Dom Perignon. "Thank you," Mia replied, her voice carrying the cultured tones she had practiced for weeks. She had worked with a voice coach to soften her natural directness, adding layers of sophistication that would appeal to someone like Jake. The crowd was exactly what she had expected. Art collectors discussing acquisitions, museum board members debating upcoming exhibitions, society figures who treated cultural events as elaborate networking opportunities. Mia moved through the gathering with practiced ease, engaging in conversations that established her as someone worth knowing. "The Basquiat retrospective at the Whitney was extraordinary," she told Margaret Chin, a prominent gallery owner. "The way they contextualized his work within the broader narrative of 1980s New York culture was brilliant." Margaret's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "You have excellent taste. Are you collecting seriously?" "I'm building a focused collection," Mia replied carefully. "Contemporary pieces that explore the intersection of technology and human experience. I'm particularly interested in artists who challenge our relationship with digital spaces." The conversation was interrupted by a subtle shift in the room's energy. Mia turned to see Jake Hawthorne entering with Victoria Pemberton, and her breath caught despite all her preparation. In person, Jake was more compelling than his photographs suggested. Tall and lean with dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it, intelligent brown eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Victoria clung to his arm like an expensive accessory, her platinum hair perfectly styled, her smile bright and empty. She wore a stunning red gown that probably cost more than most people's cars, but something about her seemed hollow, performative. She was playing the role of the perfect fiancée without inhabiting it. Mia watched Jake's face as Victoria introduced him to various guests, noting the polite distance in his expression. He was going through the motions, saying the right things, but his attention kept drifting to the art surrounding them. When Victoria launched into an animated discussion about her latest shopping trip to Paris, Jake's eyes glazed over with barely concealed boredom. "Fascinating," Mia murmured to herself. The cracks in their relationship were more visible than she had hoped. She positioned herself strategically near a contemporary sculpture that she knew would appeal to Jake's interests, a piece by Maya Lin that explored themes of memory and technology. When Jake inevitably gravitated toward the artwork, Mia was ready. "The way she uses negative space is extraordinary," Mia said quietly, not looking at Jake but speaking just loudly enough for him to hear. "It's like she's making the absence of something more powerful than its presence." Jake turned, his attention caught. Up close, he was even more attractive, but Mia forced herself to remain focused on the sculpture, projecting the kind of intellectual absorption that would intrigue him. You're referring to the interplay between the physical structure and the digital projections? Jake asked, moving closer to study the piece. Exactly, Mia replied, finally meeting his eyes. The technology isn't dominating the human element, it's amplifying it. The digital components make us more aware of what's missing, what we've lost in our rush toward virtual connection. Jake's expression shifted from polite interest to genuine engagement. That's a sophisticated reading. Most people see the tech elements and assume it's about embracing digital progress. Most people aren't really looking, Mia said with a slight smile. They're seeing what they expect to see rather than what's actually there. The comment carried layers of meaning that Jake couldn't possibly understand yet, but Mia saw him register the depth behind her words. This was exactly the kind of intellectual stimulation that his relationship with Victoria clearly lacked. I'm Jake Hawthorne, he said, extending his hand. Mia, she replied, allowing their handshake to linger just a moment longer than necessary. I know who you are, of course. Your work with immersive digital environments is fascinating. Jake's eyebrows rose slightly. Most people at these events knew him as a successful tech entrepreneur, but few understood the specific nature of his company's innovations. You're familiar with our VR applications? I read your interview in Wired about emotional resonance in virtual spaces, Mia said. Your point about technology needing to enhance rather than replace human connection really resonated with me. It's rare to find someone in tech who understands that innovation without humanity is just sophisticated machinery. The words were carefully chosen, echoing themes from Jake's own public statements while demonstrating the kind of intellectual depth that would appeal to him. Mia watched his face light up with the pleasure of being truly understood. Exactly, Jake said, his enthusiasm genuine for the first time all evening. Too many people in my industry are so focused on what technology can do that they forget to ask what it should do. The most powerful innovations are the ones that make us more human, not less. Their conversation was interrupted by Victoria's arrival, her smile sharp with territorial awareness. Jake, darling, you've wandered off again, she said, sliding her arm through his with possessive familiarity. Victoria, I'd like you to meet Mia, Jake said politely. We were discussing the Lynn piece. Victoria glanced at the sculpture with a kind of dismissive look reserved for things she didn't understand and couldn't be bothered to learn about. Oh, how nice. Jake's always getting lost in these abstract things. I keep telling him that art should be beautiful, not confusing. The comment revealed everything Mia needed to know about the fundamental disconnect between Jake and his fiancée. While Jake craved intellectual stimulation and meaningful artistic expression, Victoria preferred pretty things that didn't challenge her worldview. I think confusion can be beautiful, Mia said gently. The best art makes us question what we think we know about ourselves and the world around us. Jake's eyes met hers with a flash of appreciation, while Victoria's smile became even more strained. How philosophical, Victoria said with barely concealed condescension. Are you an artist yourself? I'm a collector, Mia replied smoothly. I'm particularly interested in pieces that explore the relationship between technology and human experience. It's a fascinating area of contemporary work. Oh, like those computer art things? Victoria asked, clearly out of her depth. I never really understand what they're supposed to mean. The awkward silence that followed was broken by Jake clearing his throat. Mia was just explaining some really insightful interpretations of digital art integration, he said, clearly trying to bridge the gap between his fiancée's limitations and his own interests. But the damage was done. The contrast between Mia's sophisticated understanding and Victoria's superficial dismissal was stark and obvious. Mia could see Jake processing the difference, perhaps for the first time really noticing how little he and Victoria had in common beyond their social compatibility. I should let you two get back to your evening, Mia said graciously, sensing that she had planted enough seeds for one encounter. It was lovely meeting you both. Wait, Jake said quickly. Are you planning to attend the Whitney's new media exhibition next week? I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on some of the pieces. Victoria's grip on his arm tightened almost imperceptibly, but Mia pretended not to notice. I'll be there for the opening reception, she said. Perhaps we'll run into each other again. As Mia walked away, she could feel Jake's eyes following her. The first move had been executed perfectly. She had established herself as intellectually stimulating, culturally sophisticated, and mysteriously intriguing. More importantly, she had highlighted the intellectual void in Jake's relationship with Victoria without appearing to do so deliberately. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of strategic conversations and careful positioning. Mia made sure to be seen engaging with prominent figures in the art world, establishing her credibility and social standing. She caught Jake glancing in her direction several times, his attention clearly divided between his social obligations and his curiosity about the mysterious woman who had understood his work so completely. As the evening wound down, Mia made her exit without seeking another conversation with Jake. The key to successful seduction was creating desire through scarcity, making him want more of what he couldn't quite have. Walking through the museum's corridors toward the exit, Mia felt a dangerous thrill of satisfaction. The game had begun, and Jake Hawthorne had taken the bait exactly as she had hoped. His engagement to Victoria suddenly looked less like a love match and more like a convenient arrangement between two people who had very little in common. The next phase would be even more delicate, building on tonight's foundation while gradually drawing Jake deeper into her web. She would become the intellectual and emotional connection he was missing, the woman who understood his passions and challenged his thinking. But as Mia stepped out into the cool Manhattan night, she pushed aside a small, unwelcome voice that whispered about the genuine spark she had felt during their conversation. This was about revenge, about justice for Lily. Whatever attraction she might feel was simply a tool to be used in service of a larger goal. Jake Hawthorne had destroyed her sister without a second thought. Now it was time for him to learn what that kind of casual cruelty actually cost. The Whitney's new media exhibition opening was everything Mia had anticipated. A carefully orchestrated collision of cutting-edge technology and artistic vision that would draw Jake like a moth to flame. She arrived early, positioning herself in front of a particularly compelling interactive installation that explored themes of digital identity and human connection. The piece, titled Fractured Selves, consisted of multiple screens that reflected and distorted viewers' images while overlaying fragments of text about authenticity in the digital age. Mia found herself genuinely absorbed by the work, studying how the artist had used technology to comment on the very medium itself. "It's unsettling, isn't it?" Jake's voice came from behind her, and Mia felt a flutter of satisfaction that he had sought her out so quickly. She turned, offering him a smile that was part welcome, part mystery. "Unsettling in the best possible way. The artist is forcing us to confront how fragmented our identities become when we exist across multiple digital platforms." Jake moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could catch the subtle scent of his cologne, something expensive and understated that suited him perfectly. The way the text overlays change based on facial recognition is brilliant. It's like the piece is reading our emotional responses and reflecting them back to us. "Exactly," Mia said, genuinely impressed by his insight. "It's not just showing us technology, it's using technology to reveal something true about human nature. The fragmentation isn't a bug, it's a feature of how we actually experience identity in the modern world." Their conversation flowed with an ease that surprised Mia. She had expected to have to work harder to maintain Jake's interest, but he seemed genuinely hungry for this kind of intellectual exchange. As they moved through the exhibition together, discussing each piece with increasing animation, she began to understand what was missing from his relationship with Victoria. "Your fiancé didn't join you tonight?" Mia asked casually as they paused in front of a virtual reality installation. Jake's expression flickered with something that might have been disappointment. "Victoria finds these events challenging. She prefers more traditional art forms." The diplomatic phrasing spoke volumes. Mia could read between the lines. Victoria found intellectual art boring and probably made no effort to hide her disinterest. For someone like Jake, whose passion for innovation and meaningful expression was clearly central to his identity, that kind of dismissal must have felt isolating. "That's unfortunate," Mia said gently. "Sharing these experiences with someone who understands them makes them so much richer." Jake glanced at her, and for a moment, his carefully maintained composure slipped. She saw loneliness there, a hunger for connection that went beyond the superficial social interactions that probably dominated his daily life. "Would you like to try the VR piece?" he asked, gesturing toward the installation where participants could experience a digital recreation of a destroyed Syrian archaeological site. "I'd love to," Mia replied, though she felt a strange flutter of nervousness. This wasn't part of her plan. The genuine enthusiasm in Jake's voice, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about art and technology, the unexpected warmth she felt when he smiled at her. The VR experience was profound, transporting them to ancient ruins that existed now only in digital memory. When they removed their headsets, both were quiet for a moment, processing the emotional weight of what they had witnessed. "It's incredible how technology can preserve what we've lost," Jake said softly. "But also heartbreaking that we need to preserve it at all." Mia found herself studying his profile as he spoke, noting the genuine emotion in his voice. This wasn't the cold, cruel man who had destroyed Lily's dreams. This was someone who felt deeply, who understood the power of art to move and transform people. The contradiction was unsettling. How could someone so sensitive to artistic expression have been so callous about Lily's work? The question nagged at her as they continued through the exhibition, their conversation growing more personal and intimate with each shared observation. "I have to ask," Jake said as they paused near a quiet corner of the gallery, "what drew you to collecting art that explores technology and humanity? It's not the most commercially popular area." Mia had prepared for this question, but something about Jake's genuine curiosity made her want to offer a more honest answer than she had planned. "I think we're living through a fundamental shift in what it means to be human," she said carefully. "Technology isn't just changing how we work or communicate, it's changing how we understand ourselves, how we connect with each other. Artists who explore that territory are documenting the most important transformation of our time." Jake's eyes widened slightly. "That's exactly how I think about the work we're doing at Hawthorne Technologies. We're not just building better interfaces, we're trying to understand how digital experiences can enhance rather than diminish human connection." The passion in his voice was unmistakable, and Mia felt an unexpected pang of something that might have been guilt. This man clearly cared deeply about the intersection of technology and humanity, so why had he rejected Lily's exploration of those very themes so brutally? "Your work must be incredibly fulfilling," she said, pushing aside her confusion to focus on the task at hand. "It is, but it's also isolating sometimes," Jake admitted, his guard dropping further. "Most people in my industry are focused on metrics and market share. They don't understand that the most important innovations are the ones that make us feel more connected to each other, not less." There was something vulnerable in his admission, a loneliness that Mia recognized despite herself. She had expected to find a cold, calculating businessman, but Jake was revealing himself to be someone who felt deeply about his work and struggled with the isolation that came from having passions that others didn't share or understand. "That must be difficult," she said softly, "feeling like you're the only one who sees the bigger picture." Jake looked at her with surprise, as if he hadn't expected to be understood so completely. "Victoria thinks I'm too idealistic," he said, then seemed to catch himself. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't be discussing my relationship with someone I barely know." But Mia could see that he wanted to discuss it, that he was starved for someone who would understand his perspective rather than dismiss it as impractical dreaming. "Sometimes it's easier to talk to someone who doesn't have preconceived notions about who you're supposed to be," she said carefully. Jake studied her face for a long moment, and Mia felt something shift between them. A recognition, a connection that went beyond her carefully planned seduction strategy. The attraction she was feeling wasn't entirely calculated anymore, and that realization sent a chill of alarm through her system. "Would you like to get coffee?" Jake asked suddenly. "There's a place nearby that stays open late. I'd love to continue this conversation." Mia hesitated for just a moment. Coffee meant extending their time together, deepening their connection, moving beyond the safe boundaries of a chance encounter at an art exhibition. It meant stepping further into dangerous territory where her feelings might become as real as his. "I'd like that," she heard herself say, and meant it more than she should have. The coffee shop was intimate and dimly lit, the kind of place where serious conversations happened over expertly crafted lattes. They found a corner table away from the few other late-night patrons, and their discussion continued to flow with surprising ease. Jake talked about his vision for technology that enhanced human creativity rather than replacing it, about his frustration with an industry that often prioritized efficiency over meaning. Mia found herself sharing genuine thoughts about art and culture, drawing on her recent intensive education but also on instincts and observations that were entirely her own. "You have an unusual perspective," Jake said, leaning forward slightly. "Most collectors I meet are focused on investment potential or social status. You actually care about what the art is trying to say." "Art that doesn't say anything isn't worth collecting," Mia replied, then caught herself. She was being too honest, revealing too much of her real self beneath the carefully constructed persona. But Jake's smile suggested he appreciated her directness. "I wish more people understood that. Victoria thinks art should be decorative, something that matches the furniture and doesn't challenge anyone's assumptions." The comparison was implicit but clear. Mia understood what art was supposed to do, while Victoria saw it as expensive decoration. Jake was drawing connections between them, building a bridge that Mia had intended to construct but hadn't expected to want to cross. "Different people connect with art in different ways," Mia said diplomatically, though part of her wanted to agree more enthusiastically with his assessment. "True," Jake said, but some ways of connecting are deeper than others. Some people see art as a window into human experience, while others just see pretty objects to own. The conversation continued past midnight, ranging from art to technology to philosophy to personal dreams and frustrations. Mia found herself genuinely enjoying Jake's company, appreciating his intelligence and passion in ways that had nothing to do with her revenge plan. When they finally parted ways outside the coffee shop, Jake's reluctance to end the evening was obvious. "I hope we run into each other again soon," he said, and there was something in his voice that suggested he wasn't planning to leave their next meeting to chance. "I'm sure we will," Mia replied, allowing just enough warmth into her voice to encourage him without seeming eager. As she walked home through the quiet Manhattan streets, Mia felt a troubling mix of satisfaction and confusion. The evening had gone better than she could have hoped. Jake was clearly intrigued, clearly beginning to question what was missing from his current relationship. But she hadn't expected to enjoy his company so genuinely, hadn't anticipated the way his passion for meaningful innovation would resonate with her own values. The man she had spent the evening with bore little resemblance to the cold destroyer of dreams she had been planning to seduce and destroy. Either Jake Hawthorne was a masterful actor, or there was something about his rejection of Lily's work that she didn't understand. But it didn't matter, she told herself firmly. Whatever complexity existed in Jake's character, whatever genuine connection she might feel, her mission remained the same. He had destroyed Lily and he would pay for that destruction. Even if part of her was beginning to wish things could be different. 2 months of carefully orchestrated encounters had transformed Mia's calculated seduction into something far more dangerous. A relationship that felt increasingly real with each passing day. Jake had broken up with Victoria 3 weeks ago, citing their fundamental incompatibility, though he had been careful not to mention Mia's role in his growing awareness of what was missing from his life. The breakup had been surprisingly amicable, according to the society pages that covered such things with breathless detail. Victoria had released a statement about growing in different directions and remaining friends, while Jake had simply confirmed that they had mutually decided to end their engagement. But Mia knew the truth. She had shown Jake what intellectual and emotional connection could feel like, and he could no longer pretend to be satisfied with Victoria's beautiful emptiness. Their relationship had evolved with an intensity that caught Mia off guard. What had begun as strategic encounters at gallery openings and museum exhibitions had become intimate dinners, long walks through Central Park, and conversations that stretched deep into the night. Jake pursued her with a single-minded focus that was both flattering and terrifying, because Mia found herself responding with emotions that had nothing to do with revenge. "I've never met anyone like you," Jake had told her just last week, his fingers intertwined with hers as they sat on a bench overlooking the reservoir. "You see the world the way I do, but you challenge me to see it better." The words had sent a thrill through Mia that she couldn't entirely attribute to the success of her plan. Jake's attention was intoxicating. His intelligence, his passion for meaningful innovation, his surprising vulnerability when he talked about the pressure of living up to his father's legacy. She had expected to seduce a shallow tech mogul. Instead, she had discovered a complex man who struggled with many of the same questions about authenticity and purpose that she faced in her own life. But this morning, staring at the pregnancy test in her Manhattan apartment bathroom, Mia felt her carefully constructed world tilt off its axis. 2 pink lines stared back at her with undeniable clarity, confirming what her body had been trying to tell her for the past week. She was pregnant with Jake Hawthorne's child. The irony was devastating. Her plan for revenge had been derailed by the most fundamental consequence of human connection, the creation of new life. What was supposed to be a calculated seduction had become something real enough to result in a baby, a tiny person who would forever link her to the man she had set out to destroy. Mia sank onto her bathroom floor, the pregnancy test trembling in her hands. Everything was wrong. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to make Jake fall in love with her, then reveal the truth about her identity and motivations, destroying him the way he had destroyed Lily. Instead, she was carrying his child and fighting feelings that grew stronger every day. The past 2 months had been a masterclass in the dangerous territory between performance and reality. Jake's genuine affection, his obvious happiness when he was with her, his careful attention to her thoughts and feelings, all of it had worn down her defenses in ways she hadn't anticipated. She had fallen into the role of loving him so completely that the line between acting and feeling had disappeared entirely. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Dinner tonight? I have something important to discuss with you." Mia stared at the message, her heart racing. Did he suspect something? Had he discovered her connection to Lily? Or was this about something else entirely, Perhaps his own feelings, his own plans for their future? She typed back, "Yes, but I have something important to tell you too." The words felt loaded with significance that Jake couldn't possibly understand. Tonight, everything would change. She would have to tell him about the pregnancy and then, what? Continue the charade while carrying his child? Confess everything and face the consequences? Try to build something real on a foundation of lies? The restaurant Jake had chosen was intimate and elegant, the kind of place where serious conversations happened over carefully prepared meals. Mia arrived to find him already waiting, his expression a mixture of nervousness and excitement that made her stomach clench with guilt. "You look beautiful," he said, rising to kiss her cheek, and the genuine warmth in his voice made her want to cry. They ordered wine, or rather, Jake ordered wine while Mia requested sparkling water, a choice that earned her a curious glance but no comment. The conversation flowed as it always did between them, touching on art, technology, and the future of human connection in an increasingly digital world. But underneath the familiar rhythm of their intellectual dance, Mia could feel the weight of unspoken truths pressing down on both of them. "Mia," Jake said finally, reaching across the table to take her hand, "these past 2 months have been the most incredible of my life. You've changed everything for me, how I see my work, my relationships, my future. I know we haven't been together long, but I've never been more certain of anything." Mia's heart hammered against her ribs as Jake reached into his jacket pocket, producing a small velvet box that made her breath catch in her throat. "I love you," he said simply, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring that caught the candlelight like captured starfire. "I want to spend my life with you, building something beautiful together. Will you marry me?" The proposal hung in the air between them, beautiful and terrible in its sincerity. Jake's eyes shone with hope and love, completely unaware that the woman he was offering his future to had originally planned to destroy him. The ring was exquisite, clearly chosen with care and thought, representing a future that Jake genuinely wanted to share with her. "Jake," Mia whispered, her voice breaking slightly, "I need to tell you something first." His expression shifted to concern at her tone. "What is it? You're scaring me." Mia took a shaky breath, knowing that her next words would change everything between them forever. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. Jake's face cycled through surprise, shock, and then something that looked remarkably like joy. "Pregnant?" he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. We're going to have a baby?" Mia nodded, tears threatening to spill over. "I just found out this morning. I know this changes everything, I know it's not what you planned." "Are you kidding?" Jake interrupted, his voice filled with wonder. "Mia, this is incredible. This is perfect. We're going to have a family." He was around the table in an instant, pulling her into his arms with a tenderness that made her heart break. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "I love you and I love our baby already. Please say yes. Please marry me." The sincerity in his voice, the genuine joy at the prospect of becoming a father, the way he held her like she was something precious, all of it crashed over Mia like a wave, washing away the last of her resistance. This wasn't the cold, cruel man who had destroyed Lily's dreams. This was someone who loved her, who wanted to build a life with her, who was already planning a future for their unborn child. "Yes," she whispered, the word escaping before she could stop it. "Yes, I'll marry you." Jake's kiss was soft and reverent, filled with promises and dreams that Mia desperately wanted to believe in. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, it felt like both a beginning and an ending, the start of something beautiful and the death of her plans for revenge. As they sat together in the restaurant, Jake's hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach, Mia felt the full weight of what she had done. She had set out to seduce and destroy Jake Hawthorne, but instead she had fallen in love with him and was now carrying his child. The revenge plot that had consumed her for months had transformed into something else entirely. A love story built on deception with consequences that would last a lifetime. But even as guilt and confusion swirled through her mind, Mia couldn't deny the happiness that bloomed in her chest when Jake talked excitedly about their future together. Whatever had motivated his cruel treatment of Lily, the man sitting across from her was someone she genuinely loved, someone who loved her in return. The question now was whether love built on lies could survive the truth that would eventually have to be told. The wedding took place 3 weeks later in the intimate garden of Jake's family estate in the Hamptons, a ceremony that managed to be both elegant and understated despite the short planning timeline. White roses climbed ancient trellises while string quartet music drifted across manicured lawns, creating an atmosphere of timeless romance that felt almost surreal to Mia. She stood before the mirror in the estate's bridal suite, adjusting the simple but exquisite silk gown that Jake had insisted on buying for her. The dress was perfect, classic lines that would accommodate her changing body, delicate beadwork that caught the afternoon light, a design that spoke of sophistication rather than ostentation. Everything about the day was perfect, which made the deception at its heart even more devastating. "You look radiant," said Elena, Jake's sister, as she helped arrange Mia's veil. "I've never seen my brother this happy. You're exactly what he needed." The words were meant as a compliment, but they twisted in Mia's stomach like a knife. Elena had no idea that the woman her brother was marrying had originally planned to destroy him, that this beautiful wedding was built on a foundation of lies and revenge that could crumble at any moment. Through the window, Mia could see guests arriving, Jake's business associates, family friends, a carefully curated group of people who represented his world of privilege and success. She had invited only a handful of people from her own life, claiming that she preferred intimate gatherings. The truth was that she couldn't risk anyone recognizing her connection to Lily or questioning the rapid timeline of her relationship with Jake. Lily had agreed to attend, though her presence felt like a constant reminder of the betrayal Mia was perpetrating. Her sister sat in the third row, wearing a pale blue dress that made her look fragile and ethereal. The past few months had been kinder to Lily. She had started painting again, small pieces that showed glimpses of her returning confidence, but she still carried the shadow of Jake's rejection in her posture and expression. "Are you ready?" Elena asked, and Mia nodded, though she felt anything but prepared for what she was about to do. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of vows and promises that felt both sacred and profane. Jake's voice was steady and sure as he pledged his love and devotion, his eyes never leaving Mia's face. When it came time for her to speak, the words caught in her throat. "I promise to love you," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper, "to support your dreams and to build a life with you based on truth and trust." The irony of the last phrase was almost unbearable, but Jake's smile was so radiant, so full of joy and hope, that Mia felt tears spring to her eyes. This man loved her completely, trusted her absolutely, and had no idea that their entire relationship was founded on deception. When Jake kissed her at the altar, sealing their union before God and witnesses, Mia felt something break inside her chest. She was now Mrs. Jake Hawthorne, bound to a man she had grown to love but whose trust she had gained through lies. The applause of their guests felt like thunder in her ears, celebrating a union that might not survive the truth she would eventually have to tell. The reception was held on the estate's terrace, overlooking gardens that stretched down to the ocean. Mia moved through the celebration like an actress playing a role, accepting congratulations and well wishes while her mind churned with guilt and confusion. Every toast to their happiness, every prediction of their bright future together, felt like another weight added to the burden she carried. "To Jake and Mia," Richard Hawthorne said, raising his champagne glass, "may your marriage be blessed with the same love and partnership that has sustained our family for generations." Jake's father was an imposing figure, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that commanded attention in any room. Mia had met him only twice before the wedding, but she could see where Jake had inherited both his intelligence and the pressure that sometimes shadowed his expression. "Thank you, Dad," Jake replied, his arm tightening around Mia's waist. "I know Mom would have loved Mia. She always said I'd know when I found the right person, and she was right." The mention of Jake's deceased mother sent another pang through Mia's chest. She was being welcomed into a family legacy, accepted as the woman who would help carry the Hawthorne name into the future, all while harboring secrets that could destroy everything. As the evening progressed, Mia found herself watching Lily from across the terrace. Her sister had been polite but distant throughout the celebration, speaking only when spoken to and declining invitations to dance. When their eyes met across the crowd, Lily's expression was unreadable, but Mia could sense the questions and concerns that her sister was too loyal to voice. "Your sister seems quiet," Jake observed, following Mia's gaze. "Is she feeling all right?" "She's just not comfortable in large social gatherings," Mia replied carefully. "Lily's always been more of an introvert." It was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. Lily was struggling with watching her sister marry the man who had destroyed her career, even though she didn't know about Mia's original motivations. The situation was complicated in ways that Jake couldn't begin to understand. "I'd like to get to know her better," Jake said thoughtfully. "Family is important to me, and anyone who matters to you matters to me." The sincerity in his voice made Mia's throat tighten with emotion. Jake genuinely wanted to build relationships with the people she loved, to create the kind of extended family bonds that would last a lifetime. He had no idea that Lily had every reason to hate him, or that Mia's love for her sister was what had brought them together in the first place. Later that evening, as the last guests departed and they retired to the estate's master suite, Jake pulled Mia into his arms with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "Mrs. Hawthorne," he murmured against her ear, "I love the sound of that." "It's going to take some getting used to," Mia replied, and the words carried more truth than Jake could know. "I want you to know," Jake said, his voice growing serious, "that I understand this has all happened very quickly. The pregnancy, the proposal, the wedding, I know it might feel overwhelming. But I want you to feel secure, loved, supported. This isn't just about the baby, Mia. I would have wanted to marry you regardless." His words were meant to reassure her, but they only deepened her guilt. Jake was trying to make sure she didn't feel trapped or pressured, when in reality she was the one who had trapped him through deception and manipulation. "I know," she whispered, pressing her face against his chest to hide the tears that threatened to fall. "I love you too." And she did love him, which made everything so much more complicated. The man she had married was nothing like the cold destroyer of dreams she had expected to find. Jake was kind, thoughtful, and genuinely committed to building a life based on mutual respect and shared values. He deserved better than a wife who had married him under false pretenses. As they lay together in the darkness, Jake's hand resting protectively over her growing belly, Mia stared at the ceiling and tried to imagine a future where the truth didn't eventually destroy everything they were building. But she couldn't see a path forward that didn't involve devastating the man who now trusted her completely. The next morning brought the reality of married life. Breakfast together in the estate's sunny kitchen, discussions about when they would return to the city, plans for preparing their apartment for the baby's arrival. Jake was attentive and affectionate, clearly delighted with his new role as husband and expectant father. "I've been thinking," he said over coffee, "about converting the spare room into a nursery. I know it's early, but I want everything to be perfect for when the baby arrives." His enthusiasm was infectious and heartbreaking in equal measure. Jake was already planning their child's future, imagining family traditions and milestones, building dreams that could all come crashing down if Mia ever found the courage to tell him the truth about how they had met. "That sounds wonderful," she managed, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack her face. As they drove back to Manhattan that afternoon, the city skyline rising before them like a promise of new beginnings, Mia felt the weight of her double life settling around her like a shroud. She was now Mrs. Jake Hawthorne, living in his world of privilege and success, carrying his child and sharing his bed. But she was also still Lily's sister, still carrying the anger and desire for justice that had started this entire charade. The question that haunted her was whether love could truly flourish in soil poisoned by deception, and whether the truth would eventually demand its due regardless of the cost. Living a lie becomes harder when the person you're deceiving treats you with genuine love and respect. Mia had achieved everything she'd planned, but success felt more like a prison than a victory. 3 months of married life had settled into a rhythm that felt both natural and surreal. Mia had moved into Jake's penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, a space that reflected his sophisticated taste and success. The morning routine they had developed, coffee together while reading the news, discussions about their respective days, gentle touches as they passed each other in the kitchen, felt like something from a life she had never dared to imagine for herself. Her pregnancy was beginning to show, a small but unmistakable curve that Jake couldn't resist touching whenever they were alone together. His wonder at the changes in her body was touching and genuine, making her feel cherished in ways that had nothing to do with her original plans for revenge. "Good morning, beautiful," Jake murmured, wrapping his arms around her from behind as she stood at the kitchen window, watching the early morning joggers circle the reservoir below. "Good morning," she replied, leaning back against his chest and allowing herself to enjoy the simple pleasure of being held by someone who loved her completely. "I have to fly to Boston today for meetings with the MIT partnership," Jake said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I should be back by evening, but it might run late." "No problem," Mia said, turning in his arms to face him. "I was thinking of organizing your home office anyway. It's been driving me crazy how cluttered your desk has gotten." Jake laughed, the sound warm and affectionate. "You don't have to do that. I know where everything is even if it looks chaotic." "Humor me," Mia said, straightening his tie with the kind of intimate gesture that had become second nature. "I'm nesting apparently. The pregnancy books say it's normal." "In that case, nest away," Jake replied, kissing her forehead. "Just don't throw away anything that looks important even if it seems like junk to you." After Jake left for the airport, Mia found herself alone in the apartment with time to kill and nervous energy that needed an outlet. The home office had indeed become cluttered over the past few months, with papers scattered across the desk, files stacked haphazardly, and receipts stuffed into drawers without any apparent organization. She started with the desk surface, sorting documents into logical piles: business correspondence, personal mail, financial statements. Jake's filing system was practically non-existent, which explained why he could never find anything when he needed it. As she worked, Mia felt a sense of satisfaction at bringing order to the chaos, creating a space where Jake could be more productive and focused. It was while organizing the desk drawers that she found the first receipt that made her pause. A payment to Whitfield Gallery for $15,000, dated just 2 weeks after Lily's devastating rejection at the Hawthorne Technologies unveiling. The amount was significant, but it was the gallery name that caught her attention. Margaret Whitfield was one of the dealers who had shown interest in Lily's work before Jake's public dismissal had destroyed her reputation. Mia stared at the receipt, her mind racing. Why would Jake be making payments to a gallery that had been interested in Lily? The timing seemed too coincidental to ignore, but she couldn't make sense of what it might mean. She continued sorting through the drawer, and more receipts emerged that made her stomach clench with growing unease. Payments to various galleries, art dealers, and cultural institutions, all dated after Lily's rejection, all for substantial amounts. The names were familiar from Mia's research into the art world, but she couldn't understand why Jake would be conducting business with these particular people. Then she found the correspondence file that changed everything. The folder was labeled LB Project in Jake's careful handwriting, and inside were dozens of emails, letters, and documents that made Mia's hands shake as she read them. Communications with gallery owners about anonymous acquisitions of work by an emerging artist whose career deserves support. Recommendations sent to museum curators praising the innovative vision of a sculptor whose work had been unfairly dismissed due to circumstances beyond her control. Every document, every email, every carefully crafted recommendation was about Lily. Jake had been secretly orchestrating a campaign to rebuild her sister's career, using his influence and resources to create opportunities that Lily would never know came from him. "Dear Miss Chen," read one email to a prominent gallery owner, "I wanted to bring to your attention the work of Lily Brown, whose installation Convergence represents some of the most innovative thinking in contemporary sculpture. While the piece was not suitable for our corporate environment, I believe it would be perfect for collectors who appreciate challenging, thought-provoking art." Mia sank into Jake's desk chair, the papers scattered around her like evidence of a crime she couldn't quite comprehend. Her husband, the man she had married for revenge, the man she had grown to love despite herself, had been secretly trying to repair the damage he had caused to Lily's career. The scope of his efforts was staggering. Anonymous purchases of Lily's smaller pieces to drive up demand and establish market value. Introductions to collectors who specialized in contemporary sculpture. Recommendations to museum curators who were always looking for fresh talent. Jake had been working behind the scenes for months, using his connections and credibility to rebuild what his public rejection had destroyed. But why? Why would he go to such elaborate lengths to help someone whose work he had dismissed as unsuitable? The contradiction made no sense unless. Mia found her answer in a draft email that Jake had apparently never sent, buried deep in the folder among the other documents. The message was addressed to Lily directly, and reading it felt like discovering a secret that was never meant to be revealed. "Dear Ms. Brown," the draft began, "I owe you an apology that is long overdue and probably inadequate. My rejection of your installation had nothing to do with the quality of your work, which is extraordinary, and everything to do with my own personal crisis on that day. I had just learned that my father was in the hospital with a heart attack, our biggest client was threatening to terminate their contract, and the board was questioning my leadership of the company. I was not in the right frame of mind to appreciate what you had created, and I reacted badly to something that challenged me when I was already feeling overwhelmed." The email continued, detailing Jake's recognition of the damage he had caused and his desperate attempts to make amends without having to face the humiliation of admitting his mistake directly. He had tried to call Lily the day after the rejection, but couldn't find the words to explain how his personal problems had led him to destroy someone else's dreams. Instead, he had chosen to help her anonymously, hoping that rebuilding her career would somehow balance the scales of the harm he had caused. "I know this doesn't excuse my behavior," the draft concluded, "but I want you to know that your work is brilliant, your vision is important, and the art world is better for having your voice in it. I hope someday I will find the courage to apologize to you properly, but until then, please know that someone believes in your talent and is working to ensure it receives the recognition it deserves." Mia stared at the screen until the words blurred through her tears. Everything she thought she knew about Jake, about his motivations, about the kind of person he was, had just been turned upside down. He wasn't the cold, calculating destroyer of dreams she had believed him to be. He was someone who had made a terrible mistake during the worst day of his professional life and had been trying to make amends ever since. The man she had seduced for revenge was the same man who had been secretly fighting to restore her sister's career. The husband she had grown to love despite her deception was someone who had been carrying his own burden of guilt and regret, working tirelessly to repair damage that he was too ashamed to acknowledge publicly. Mia's phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Meetings running late as expected. Don't wait up for me. Love you. She stared at the message, her mind reeling with the implications of what she had discovered. Jake loved her, trusted her, was building a life with her based on what he believed was mutual honesty and respect. But their entire relationship was founded on her desire for revenge against someone who had been trying to make things right all along. The irony was devastating. She had set out to destroy a man who was already destroying himself with guilt over his treatment of Lily. She had fallen in love with someone whose secret efforts to help her sister proved that he was exactly the kind of person she could respect and admire. But now what? How could she continue living this lie when she knew the truth about Jake's character? How could she face Lily, knowing that the man her sister still believed had destroyed her career was actually working to rebuild it? And how could she ever tell Jake that their love story had begun as a calculated plan for revenge? The documents scattered across the desk told the story of a man trying to atone for his mistakes through actions rather than words. But they also revealed the depth of deception that now poisoned everything Mia had built with him. As she sat in Jake's office, surrounded by evidence of his secret kindness, Mia realized that the truth was more complicated than she had ever imagined. The question now was whether love built on mutual deception could survive the honesty that both of them desperately needed. Mia spent the rest of the day in a state of emotional paralysis. The documents from Jake's office spread across their dining room table like pieces of a puzzle that revealed a completely different picture than she had expected. Every receipt, every email, every carefully crafted recommendation told the story of a man consumed by guilt, desperately trying to repair damage he was too ashamed to acknowledge directly. When Jake's key turned in the lock at nearly midnight, Mia was still sitting at the table, staring at the evidence of his secret campaign to rebuild Lily's career. She had rehearsed this conversation a dozen times in her mind, but now that the moment had arrived, she felt completely unprepared for what was about to unfold. Mia? Jake called softly, dropping his briefcase by the door. You're still awake? We need to talk, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Jake appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened and his hair disheveled from the long day of meetings. When he saw the papers scattered across the table, his face went pale, and she watched him recognize exactly what she had discovered. You found them, he said quietly, not bothering to deny or deflect. The resignation in his voice told her that part of him had been expecting this moment, perhaps even hoping for it. The LB project, Mia said, holding up the folder. Anonymous art purchases, gallery recommendations, museum introductions. You've been secretly rebuilding Lily's career for months. Jake moved slowly into the room, his movements careful and deliberate, like someone approaching a dangerous animal. How much did you read? All of it, Mia replied. Including the email you never sent. The one where you explain about your father's heart attack, the business crisis, the board questioning your leadership. The one where you admit that rejecting Lily's work had nothing to do with its quality and everything to do with your own personal chaos. Jake sank into the chair across from her, his shoulders sagging with the weight of secrets finally exposed. I tried to call her the next day, he said quietly. I wanted to apologize, to explain what had happened. But how do you tell someone that you destroyed their dreams because you were having the worst day of your professional life? How do you admit that you took out your own stress and fear on an innocent person whose only crime was creating something beautiful? The pain in his voice was genuine and raw, and Mia felt her anger wavering despite everything. This wasn't the cold, calculating destroyer she had imagined. This was someone who had been carrying a burden of guilt that matched her own. So instead of apologizing directly, you decided to help her anonymously, Mia said, her tone carefully neutral. I thought if I could rebuild what I had destroyed, if I could use my connections to give her the career she deserved, maybe that would be enough, Jake explained. Maybe I could balance the scales without having to face the humiliation of admitting how badly I had failed as a human being that day. The humiliation? Mia's voice sharpened. Jake, you humiliated her in front of the entire art world. You destroyed her confidence, her reputation, her belief in herself. And you were worried about your own humiliation? Jake flinched as if she had struck him. You're right. I was a coward. I should have faced her directly, should have explained and apologized regardless of how uncomfortable it made me. Instead, I took the easy way out, trying to fix things from the shadows while avoiding the difficult conversation I owed her. The admission hung between them, honest and painful. Mia could see that Jake understood the magnitude of his failure, not just in rejecting Lily's work, but in his subsequent inability to take responsibility for his actions directly. "There's something else you need to know," Mia said, her heart pounding as she prepared to detonate the bomb that would destroy everything between them. "Something about why I'm so invested in Lily's story." Jake's expression shifted to confusion. "What do you mean?" Mia took a shaky breath, knowing that her next words would change everything forever. "Lily Brown is my sister." The silence that followed was deafening. Jake stared at her as if she had spoken in a foreign language, his mind clearly struggling to process what she had just revealed. "Your sister?" he repeated slowly. "Lily is your sister." "Yes," Mia whispered. "And when you destroyed her career, when you humiliated her in front of everyone who mattered in the art world, I watched her fall apart. I watched her stop painting, stop believing in herself, stop being the vibrant, passionate person she had always been. So I decided to make you pay for what you had done to her." Jake's face cycled through a series of emotions: shock, confusion, and then a dawning understanding that made him lean back in his chair as if trying to distance himself from the truth. "The gallery openings," he said quietly. "The museum exhibitions. Our conversations about art and technology. None of it was coincidental." "None of it," Mia confirmed. "I researched your habits, your interests, your relationship with Victoria. I studied art history and contemporary theory so I could engage with you intellectually. I became everything Victoria wasn't: sophisticated, challenging, genuinely interested in the things you cared about. I made you fall in love with me so I could destroy you the way you destroyed Lily." Jake stood abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked Central Park. In the darkness, his reflection looked like a ghost haunting the glass. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "How long were you planning to? What was the endgame, Mia? When were you going to destroy me?" "I don't know," Mia admitted, tears beginning to flow freely. "I hadn't figured out the details. I just knew I wanted you to feel what Lily felt, the humiliation, the loss of everything you thought was secure, the questioning of your own worth." "But you married me," Jake said, turning back to face her. "You're carrying my child. When did the revenge plan become this?" "I don't know," Mia repeated, her voice breaking. "Somewhere along the way I stopped acting and started feeling. You weren't the person I expected you to be. You were kind, thoughtful, passionate about meaningful work. You made me laugh, you listened to me, you treated me like I mattered. I fell in love with you despite myself, despite my plans, despite everything I thought I knew about who you were." Jake laughed bitterly. "So we're both liars then. I've been secretly trying to rebuild your sister's career while pretending I didn't know who she was, and you've been pretending to love me while planning my destruction." "I'm not pretending to love you," Mia said fiercely. "That's the problem, Jake. I do love you. I love you so much that it's tearing me apart, because I know I don't deserve your love in return. I built our entire relationship on deception and manipulation. And I built my entire public persona on the lie that I'm someone who makes thoughtful, principled decisions," Jake replied. "When the truth is that I destroyed an innocent person's career because I was having a bad day and couldn't handle being challenged by something beautiful and complex." They stared at each other across the room, two people who had fallen in love while carrying secrets that poisoned everything between them. The truth was finally out, but instead of bringing relief, it felt like watching something precious shatter beyond repair. "What happens now?" Mia asked quietly. Jake was silent for a long moment, his hands pressed against the window as he stared out at the city lights. "I don't know," he said finally. "I need time to process this. I need to understand how much of what we had was real and how much was performance." "My feelings for you are real," Mia said desperately. "Whatever else was false, that's true. I love you, Jake. I love the man you are, not the man I thought you were when this started." "But you were willing to destroy me," Jake said, his voice hollow. "You were planning to take everything I cared about and burn it down, just like you believe I did to Lily." "Yes," Mia admitted, because there was no point in softening the truth now. "I was. But that was before I knew you, before I understood that you were already destroying yourself with guilt over what you had done." Jake turned back to face her, and she could see the war between love and betrayal playing out in his expression. "I need to call Lily," he said suddenly. "I need to apologize to her properly, face to face. I should have done it months ago." "Jake." "No," he said firmly. "This has gone on long enough. The secrets, the guilt, the elaborate schemes to avoid difficult conversations. If we're going to have any chance of building something real from this wreckage, it has to start with honesty. Complete honesty. Mia nodded, knowing he was right even as her heart broke at the distance she could already feel growing between them. The truth was out, but the consequences were just beginning to unfold. "Will you call her?" Jake asked. "Will you ask her to meet with me?" "Yes," Mia whispered. "I'll call her." As Jake walked toward their bedroom, he paused in the doorway without looking back. "I need you to know," he said quietly, "that despite everything, despite the lies and the manipulation and the revenge plot, I still love you. I don't know if that's enough to build a marriage on, but it's the truth." Then he was gone, leaving Mia alone with the wreckage of their carefully constructed life and the uncertain hope that love might be stronger than the deception that had brought them together. The coffee shop Lily had chosen for her meeting with Jake was deliberately neutral territory, a small, quiet place in the village where neither of them would feel the weight of their respective worlds pressing down on them. Mia had made the call 3 days after her devastating conversation with Jake, her voice shaking as she explained to her sister that Jake wanted to apologize in person. "He knows," Mia had said simply, "about us being sisters, about everything. And he wants to make things right." Lily's silence on the other end of the phone had stretched for what felt like eternity before she finally agreed to the meeting. "One conversation," she had said. "That's all I can promise." Now, watching from across the street through the coffee shop's large windows, Mia felt her heart clench as she saw Jake arrive first, choosing a corner table and sitting with his back straight, his hands folded carefully in front of him. He looked nervous in a way she had rarely seen, stripped of the confident businessman persona that usually armored him in difficult situations. Lily appeared 10 minutes later, moving through the door with the careful grace that had always characterized her movements. She was wearing a simple black dress and a vintage leather jacket, her dark hair pulled back in a way that emphasized the delicate bone structure of her face. To anyone watching, she would have looked like any other young woman meeting a friend for coffee. But Mia could see the tension in her sister's shoulders, the way she held herself like someone preparing for battle. Jake stood when he saw her, a gesture of respect that seemed to surprise Lily slightly. They shook hands formally, and Mia watched them settle into their seats with the awkward politeness of two people who shared a complicated history but barely knew each other. From her vantage point across the street, Mia couldn't hear their conversation, but she could read the emotional progression in their body language. Jake spoke first, his posture earnest and apologetic. Lily listened with her arms crossed, her expression guarded but not hostile. As the conversation continued, Mia saw her sister's defensive posture gradually soften, her arms uncrossing, her body leaning slightly forward as if despite herself, she was becoming engaged in what Jake was telling her. The conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. Mia watched Jake pull out his phone at one point, showing Lily something on the screen, probably the documentation of his efforts to rebuild her career. She saw Lily's eyes widen with surprise, then narrow with what might have been anger or confusion. There were moments when both of them seemed to be struggling with emotion, Jake running his hands through his hair in the gesture Mia had come to recognize as his response to stress, Lily pressing her fingers to her temples as if fighting a headache. When they finally stood to leave, something fundamental had shifted between them. They didn't embrace, but they shook hands again, and this time the gesture seemed to carry weight and meaning. Jake said something that made Lily nod slowly, and then they parted ways, walking in opposite directions down the busy village street. Mia's phone rang 20 minutes later. "It's done," Jake said without preamble. "I told her everything. About that day, about my father, about the business crisis, about how I've been trying to help her career anonymously. I apologized for being a coward, for not facing her directly months ago." "How did she take it?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Better than I deserved," Jake replied. "She's angry and she has every right to be. But she listened. She asked good questions. She called me out on my cowardice, but she also acknowledged that I've been trying to make amends, even if I went about it the wrong way." There was a pause, and Mia could hear the sounds of the city around Jake, car horns, distant sirens, the general hum of Manhattan life continuing despite the personal dramas playing out within it. "She wants to think about my offer," Jake continued. "What offer?" "I want to arrange a proper exhibition of Convergence," Jake said. "Not hidden away in storage, not dismissed as unsuitable, but displayed in a gallery where people can see it for what it really is, a brilliant exploration of human connection in the digital age. I have connections at the Chelsea Contemporary Gallery. They specialize in exactly the kind of work Lily creates." Mia felt tears spring to her eyes. After everything that had happened, After all the deception and manipulation and pain, Jake was still trying to do right by Lily. What did she say? She said she needs to think about whether she wants my help, given our history. She's not sure she can separate my genuine desire to make amends from my guilt over what I did to her. I told her I understood, and that the offer would remain open regardless of her decision. The conversation ended with Jake saying he would be home late. He had work to catch up on after the emotional intensity of the morning. Mia spent the rest of the day in a state of anxious anticipation, waiting for Lily to call and share her perspective on the meeting. When her sister finally called that evening, her voice was thoughtful and measured. "He's not what I expected," Lily said without preamble. "I've spent months thinking of him as this cold, calculating person who destroyed my career without a second thought. But the man I met today was someone carrying a lot of guilt and regret." "What did you think of his explanation?" Mia asked carefully. "It doesn't excuse what he did," Lily said firmly. "Having a bad day, even a catastrophically bad day, doesn't justify taking it out on someone else's work. But it does help me understand that it wasn't personal, that it wasn't about my art being inadequate or inappropriate." Mia could hear her sister moving around her studio as they talked, probably organizing supplies or cleaning brushes, the kind of mindless activity that helped Lily process complex emotions. "He showed me documentation of everything he's been doing," Lily continued. "The anonymous purchases, the gallery recommendations, the museum introductions. It's extensive, Mia. He's been working really hard to rebuild what he destroyed. Are you going to accept his offer about the exhibition?" Lily was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Part of me wants to say yes because Convergence deserves to be seen. It's good work and I'm proud of it. But another part of me wonders if accepting his help means I'm letting him off the hook too easily. What does your gut tell you?" "That holding on to anger is exhausting," Lily said with a sigh. "I've spent months being furious and hurt and convinced that my career was over. But I've also started painting again, started believing in my work again. Maybe it's time to focus on moving forward instead of staying stuck in what happened." The conversation shifted then, and Lily asked the question that Mia had been dreading. "Now tell me about you and Jake," Lily said. "Tell me how you ended up married to the man who rejected my work and don't leave anything out." So Mia told her everything. The revenge plan, the careful research and preparation, the orchestrated encounters that had led to genuine feelings. She explained about the pregnancy, the quick marriage, the growing love that had complicated everything. She confessed her guilt over building a relationship on deception, and her fear that the truth would destroy any chance of happiness with Jake. Lily listened without interruption, occasionally making small sounds of surprise or understanding, but mostly just absorbing the complexity of what her sister had done and experienced. "Do you love him?" Lily asked when Mia finished. "Yes," Mia said without hesitation. "I love him more than I thought possible. Which makes everything so much more complicated." "And he loves you?" "He says he does. Even after learning about the revenge plan, even knowing that our entire relationship started as a lie, he says he still loves me. But I don't know if that's enough to build a marriage on." "Love isn't enough by itself," Lily said thoughtfully. "But it's a pretty good foundation if you're both willing to do the work of building something real on top of it." "You think we have a chance?" "I think you both made mistakes," Lily replied. "Jake hurt me and you built a relationship on deception. But I also think you're both trying to make things right now. The question is whether you can forgive each other and yourselves enough to move forward." 3 weeks later, Lily called Mia with news that changed everything. "I'm going to do the exhibition," she said, her voice bright with excitement. "But not just Convergence. Jake connected me with the curator at Chelsea Contemporary, and she wants to do a full solo show. 6 pieces including some new work I've been developing. It's going to be called Reconstruction, about rebuilding after destruction, finding beauty in broken things." "Lily, that's incredible," Mia said, feeling genuine joy for her sister for the first time in months. "There's more," Lily continued. "The curator wants to include an artist's statement about the journey from rejection to recognition, about how sometimes our greatest failures become the foundation for our greatest successes." "I'm going to tell the whole story, Mia. About the original rejection, about Jake's apology, about the process of rebuilding my confidence and my career." The exhibition opened 6 months later to reviews that exceeded everyone's expectations. Convergence was indeed the centerpiece, but it was surrounded by new work that showed Lily's evolution as an artist, pieces that explored themes of resilience, forgiveness, and the beauty that could emerge from destruction. Jake attended the opening, but he kept a respectful distance, allowing Lily to have her moment without the complication of his presence. Mia watched him from across the gallery, noting the genuine pride in his expression as he observed the crowd's reaction to Lily's work. "She's extraordinary," said Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the museum curator who had been interested in Lily's work from the beginning. "This exhibition proves that sometimes the most powerful art comes from our deepest struggles." The sales were spectacular, the critical response even better. 3 museums expressed interest in acquiring pieces for their permanent collections, and Lily's calendar filled with commission requests and exhibition opportunities. But perhaps most importantly, Lily herself seemed transformed. The fragile, broken artist who had packed away her supplies in despair had been replaced by someone who radiated confidence and creative energy. She moved through the gallery opening with grace and poise, discussing her work with collectors and critics who hung on her every word. "She's found her voice again," Jake said quietly, appearing at Mia's side as they watched Lily explain the conceptual framework behind one of her new pieces. "She has," Mia agreed, "and it's stronger than ever." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching Lily's triumph unfold around them. Their own relationship had been slowly rebuilding over the past months. Tentative conversations, careful honesty, the gradual reconstruction of trust between 2 people who had hurt each other deeply but were committed to doing better. "I have something for you," Jake said suddenly, pulling a small wrapped package from his jacket pocket. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a small sculpture that looked remarkably like Convergence, complete with tiny mirrors that caught the gallery lights. "I had it made by the same artist who created Lily's piece," Jake explained. "I wanted you to have something that represents this moment, when we all found our way back to each other, when we chose forgiveness over anger, truth over deception." Mia felt tears spring to her eyes as Jake fastened the bracelet around her wrist. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "So are you," Jake replied, and for the first time in months when he kissed her, it felt like a promise of the future they were building together rather than a reminder of the past they were trying to overcome. As the evening wound down and the last guests filtered out of the gallery, Lily approached them with a smile that was radiant with satisfaction and accomplishment. "Thank you," she said to Jake, extending her hand. "For the apology, for the opportunities, for giving me the chance to tell my story on my own terms." "Thank you for forgiving me," Jake replied, shaking her hand with genuine warmth. "And for creating art that makes the world more beautiful." Lily turned to Mia, and for a moment the sisters just looked at each other. 2 women who had been through hell and back, who had made mistakes and found redemption, who had learned that love and forgiveness were choices that had to be made again and again. "Are you happy?" Lily asked simply. Mia looked at Jake, at the gallery filled with her sister's triumphant work, at the future that stretched ahead of them, uncertain but full of possibility. "I'm getting there," she said. "We all are. Sometimes the most beautiful stories are the ones where everyone gets a second chance to be better than they were before. Love, forgiveness, and the courage to face our mistakes, these are the tools we use to rebuild when everything falls apart. And sometimes, what we build from the ruins is stronger than what we had before." If you made it this far, you're amazing. Drop a comment right now and tell me, what moment hit you hardest? When Mia discovered Jake's secret? When he finally apologized to Lily? Or when love won over revenge? Smash that like button if this story reminded you that people are more complex than they seem and that it's never too late to make things right.